You know that because of this channel, I have had the most incredible opportunities to receive and review stunning stationery products like fountain pens, journals, and premium washi tape. But every now and then, I get an email for a collaboration offer that ostensibly seems a bit far from my community and interests. But in this particular case, when I received the email from getahug, I instinctively felt every fiber in my being shout yes. And I am so excited to share this unboxing experience with you all this morning. So, I went to the Blue Mountains last week, and when I got home, I was so happy to see this little box waiting for me on my front porch. There is this really cute zipper tab that I'm going to open up. Can you maybe appreciate why I couldn't say no? Let's get this little buddy out. So, Get a Hug got in touch with me a few weeks ago, and the moment I saw these sweet bears, I knew that there was somebody in my life who would appreciate this collaboration so much. And of course, I'm talking about my 3-year-old son. So, full disclosure, when I picked up the bear, there was no way that I was going to wait until today to do the proper unboxing. So I actually opened up the box from the bottom so that I could still show you the experience of what it's like to pull open that cute little zipper tab. But I also couldn't resist sharing this with my son and seeing his reaction in real time. When I first opened up this teddy bear, I was immediately struck by how sturdy and high quality it is. There is actually a really beautiful weight to this bear, and it really feels like quite a special heirloom. The fur is so incredibly soft, and these little blush points on their cheek, I feel like just really brings the bear to life. And there's a little tag at the back with "Get a Hug" right on top of this cute little tail. I actually think the bear looks so cute as it is. And it's got these little movable limbs and a little swivelly head. But when I was contacted by Get a Hug, they gave me the option of choosing between a wide range of outfits and looks for their bears. So I picked this particular outfit that came in the box, and it becomes a little costume that you can slip over your bear. I actually got my husband's help, I showed him the range of costumes that they offered, and I asked him which one he thought our son would love the most. And he was so right to pick this little bumblebee. When I unboxed it with my son, he was just in awe. He immediately grabbed his teddy bear and gave it the biggest hug. This bear is now a new member of our family and goes everywhere with him. And he's named it Honey, which I think is so cute. None of us prompted him, but after a few minutes of playing with a bear, he decided that Honey was a fitting name, and I couldn't agree more. I want to thank Get a Hug for sending me this sweet little gift and bringing so much joy into my son's life. They have also generously provided a discount code, and I'll include all the details in the video description in case you or somebody you love will adore this bear as much as Honey has been adored as a new member of our family. Now that you've met Honey, welcome or welcome back to Tiny Tiger Collective. I'm bringing to you what I hope will be a gentle video today. The focus of my session this morning will be to fill out my 100 section of my 2026 Hobonichi A6 Techo Original. This process is part of my ongoing quest to utilize all of the spreads in the back of my Hobonichi planners that in the past, maybe I've scratched my head a little bit and not been so sure about what to do. And as a result, have left many of these spreads blank in my previous planners. But given my intentions to make the most of my journaling, while also appreciating that Hobonichi planners are getting more and more expensive, this might be a nice invitation into experimentation and play with many of the templates, resources, all on this lovely Tomoe River paper that I could really put a little bit more creativity and effort into making the most of. I have a little snack today. I've got some Darjeeling tea, and I've got one of the cookies that I had baked over the weekend for my Southeast Queensland Journal Keepers meetup, the last one of the year that I attended on Saturday in Brisbane. And I'm enjoying one of the salted chocolate chunk shortbread cookies that I made for our meetup. Before I dive into filling out my 100 list for my 2026 journal, I wanted to spend a few minutes sharing with you a bit more of a personal update. It's been quite a challenging month. Some of you who have been around since the start of my semester would know that it's been pretty stressful from September when unexpectedly I encountered a class size that was twice as big as what I typically get with student enrollments. And the large class size meant that I had to pivot very quickly in terms of redesigning a lot of my classroom activities and lesson plans in order to accommodate the fact that there were just twice as many students doing those activities and contributing to class discussions. I've also found since September semester began that because of just the sheer number of students, I've had to stay back after my classes each week up to 30 extra minutes just because there's often a queue of students with questions or comments or requests all lining up, and there's no time during class to get through all of them. So often I end up staying back, hanging out outside the classroom, or even just walking to my office across campus and constantly having a stream of students beside me seeking one on one consultation about their study progress or their assessment tasks. I hate to admit it, but it really drained me in what has already been a very full life, juggling my full time work, all of my academic, research, and leadership responsibilities, alongside also trying to maintain this channel with what has been a very meaningful practice for me in thoughtfully responding to all the comments that I receive. But as this channel has grown, that commitment has become increasingly difficult, particularly in the context of this hectic semester. I want to thank all of you who have shared such warm and generous birthday wishes over the past couple of weeks. It really did mean a lot to me to read your wonderful notes, partly because I did end up having quite a disappointing event around my birthday. I had organized for my big 40th bash to book a large table at this gorgeous establishment right on Burleigh Beach. I invited 9 of my closest friends, including their children, here on the Gold Coast. When I made the booking, they very, very strictly emphasized to me that it is only a 2 hour seating via email and via text message. And they were very firm that we had to vacate our table within 2 hours. And that works well for us because we had toddlers between 1 and 4. And with naps and family routines, being really clear about how much time we had with lunch and keeping it very clearly bounded is something that is quite supportive of what families need. However, their service was so slow and disorganized, they ended up taking over 3 hours. My guests were having to get up from the table in the middle of our meal just to put more money in their parking meter. My husband had to move the car because we parked somewhere that was 2 hours maximum. And to rub salt in the wound at the end of our meal, people barely swallowed the last bite of their dessert. And they came over and basically shooed us out and said, we need the table, please get up, please get up. It left a really bad taste in my mouth. In particular, I had made the booking and it was my intention to treat all my guests. But every time I asked them questions, they treated me like as if I wasn't even speaking English, and they just gave me this very patronizing smile. And then they addressed all the questions to a guest of mine who's one of my colleagues. And it kind of gave me just really weird vibes all throughout the lunch. And then right at the end of lunch, they plonked the bill in front of her. And my friend, being the incredibly generous, big hearted person that she was, actually put money in for her portion. And the bill got passed halfway around the table before I realized that people were put in this awkward position, not sure that they were supposed to pay, until I finally snatched the bill back, gave everybody their share of the money back, and then took care of the payment. And I think it was at that moment when I handed the bill back to the server that her eyes widened. And I think it dawned on her that I was the host of that event. Yeah, it was not how I wanted my 40th to go. And it was maybe the first time in my memory of one of my birthday celebrations being anything less than magical. Perhaps it's on me. I think I put a lot of pressure that I wanted my 40th to be a certain way. And I really wish in retrospect that I hadn't placed all this emphasis on the milestone. And we returned home that afternoon. I was laying on the couch, a bit blue. My son came up to me and he rubbed my back and he said, "Mommy, are you okay?" And that was a real moment where it also dawned on me how special it was that I have him in my life. And this is my first birthday where he is this conversational, this empathetic. He has this strong sense of others' emotions. It didn't wave a magic wand to make the disappointment completely go away, but it was definitely one that grounded me in the perspective that what truly matters to me, which are the people that I love in my life, that many of them had a good time at the lunch, and that I am surrounded by a supportive, loving community. So the weekend after, I actually had the opportunity to visit Sydney, my hometown. A good friend of mine from school was also celebrating his 40th, and he treated us to an incredible degustation lunch at one of his favorite restaurants, one of our shared favorite restaurants in Sydney called Sixpenny. And that was one where I'd say every step of the courses, the service, oh, it was perfection. And I'm really glad that I got to enjoy such perfect birthday celebrations with this dear friend. Considering that we'd already flown down to Sydney, my husband treated me to a little weekend getaway right after this party with our friends into the Blue Mountains. And my last video, you would know, was me drawing the three sisters in my toddler journal as I reflected on how meaningful the Blue Mountains has always been to me as a sacred place. Perhaps that was my birthday do-over, but we did spend a really gorgeous, peaceful couple of days up in the Blue Mountains. My son's delight riding the cable cars, seeing the stunning view of Megalong Valley. I have to say that was all so, so worth it. I did leave Sydney and return back to the Gold Coast with a certain heaviness in my heart, as grateful as I was for spending that precious quality time with my friends. Good company, good wine, good food. It nevertheless impressed upon me how I haven't quite been able to cultivate that same sense of belonging here on the Gold Coast. I've only been here 3.5 years, and it's certainly not fair to compare my lifetime in Sydney, but it was something that really left me with a reflection that is a mix of gratitude but sadness, that finding kindred spirits is so rare and precious and is one that I should never take for granted. The night before we were supposed to fly home from Sydney, though, my husband and my son both came down with possibly the most severe case of food poisoning either of them have ever experienced in their lives. They were up all night. My son was crying from stomach cramps, and we were in dire straits. I fortunately didn't join them for the meal where they had the contaminated food, so I was okay to care for them. But oh my God, I was running on fumes by the end of that day. I went out, I got the medicine. Fortunately, my son recovered a lot faster than my husband. So mostly it was about entertaining him while letting my husband get the rest he needed and let the drugs kick in for him to recover. And it was less than 2 hours before our flight when my husband finally felt better enough to call a taxi, leg it to the airport, get on the flight, get some dinner once we landed back on the Gold Coast before the medicine wore off and he just needed to sleep it off and care for his gut. The next day, I think my husband's symptoms flared up a little bit again, despite having a relatively peaceful night. And he thought he was well enough to care for our son when I went to work in the morning, but his condition quickly deteriorated, and I took the rest of the day off work in order, again, to look after our son. So, it was like the entire day was written off. Fortunately, the next day was when we had our Southeast Queensland's Journal Keepers meetup. While all of this was going on the day before, I was so close to sending an email with my apologies and cancelling, but my husband had a hinkling that he would be turning a corner, and he was right. So, after another good night's rest, Saturday, we were all well enough to make the big drive down to Brisbane. And I can't tell you how nourishing it was to be able to spend a few hours with my stationary kindred spirits in order to write, draw, decorate, and really spend some much needed time in my books. As always, that community is full of the most creative and generous people. And I came home with stacks and stacks of goodies. And this is not even counting the treats that I've already eaten. So people prepared little sticker packs, collage papers. There was a D-stash table where people shared the stamps, the ephemera, the paper, even the fountain pens that they no longer had use for. And I just love being around that incredible group of people. So it was almost like we put the misfortunes behind us. And barely 2 days after my husband recovers from the food poisoning, we had a burst water pipe in our house. And it turns out that a couple of the pipes underneath our sinks have been severely rusted and corroded. One had burst and flooded our downstairs with 5 centimeters or 2 inches of water. Thank goodness not more things were damaged, but our carpet was not doing very well. And so yesterday, we woke up in the morning after turning off the water, and with no water in the house, I took my husband and my son to campus where they could have a shower in my offices, brush their teeth before we sent our son to daycare. And then my husband and I spent the entire rest of the day coordinating the plumber to do the repair, coordinating carpet cleaners to come first dry out the place and then to do a deep clean of the carpets, and also to throw out the things that were damaged, including 2 boxes of board games that are completely soaked through. So it was another really, really rough day. Normally, I don't give very detailed life updates, but I was recently reminded of how important it is when some of my favorite stationery creators do share snippets of their lives, their challenges, and their struggles, because it reminds me that stationery is not some sort of isolated hobby happening in a vacuum, as though we lead these perfect carefree lives where we have nothing but hours upon hours to play with pens, inks, stickers, and books. But rather, it is all about squeezing in the spaces in between busy lives, commitments, responsibilities, and sometimes the efforts that we make in our books, the stickers that we plonk down, the writings that we fill up a page with, are absolutely vital parts of restoring our energy so that we can face things like a flooded house or an extremely sick baby. Literally this morning, I was watching one of Bookish Mandy's videos, and in there, she shared a little bit about the busyness in her husband's work and the toll that that has taken on their relationship and their family lives. And it was really a moment that, even though my challenges are not the same, I felt so seen and heard just by her sharing that story. I hope none of you feel like, oh, just get to the My 100 already, but rather you welcome a little bit of a story every now and then about how journaling is not just something that effortlessly happens in my life, in our lives, but something that can both be really effortful commitment to carve out the space for, and also a really vital generative practice to keep us grounded in the busyness of everyday life. There is something very joyous that happened while I was in Sydney. I discovered a relatively new stationery shop that opened in Strathfield. They have the most wonderful little hidden nook. I felt like I was entering a portal into a stationery wonderland. So I'll include the details about their location in the video description, just in case you live in Sydney or will be visiting Sydney in the future. But they had a very nondescript entryway. I was actually having dinner with a really dear friend of mine called Sam. And when we finished dinner, we noticed this little door going up to some businesses up the stairs. But there was the sweetest logo, which was this little fluffy white dog called Caramel. And when I walked up over to this logo, there was a handwritten sign tucked right next to it. And it said, "Thank you so much for noticing our little logo. We are a stationery and gift shop located up the stairs. We hope that you will follow your curiosity and come up. We promise you it will be worth it." And with an invitation like that, how could you resist? Unfortunately, they were closed that night when we finished dinner, but I took a note of their opening times. And after I got back from the Blue Mountains, I paid them a visit. In fact, I visited them twice on my trip, and I picked up this little clip to hold my journals. And I really wanted a memento of their logo, which the owner explained to me is her dog Caramel. And she has a whole door decorated behind the counter of Polaroids of Caramel with a sign that says our CEO. I also picked up these two cat stamps, and I've promised my son that we will have a little stamping session together. For those of you who have been on my channel since the very, very beginning, you might know that one of my first videos of my 2025 journal and planner lineup was this Fabriano Venezia sketchbook. At that time, I had signed up for the Wanderlust Everything Art online course. But after a few weeks, I realized that I just didn't have the time in my schedule to fit this commitment in. So I unfortunately had to pause this course. And I had this notebook with only a couple of pages painted and decorated with the one or two lessons I had managed to commit to. Rather than letting this beautiful book go to waste, I was inspired by my friend Vegan Organizer to repurpose this book as a junk journal that I'm sharing with my son. So, after collecting a whole bunch of ephemera and goodies over the last couple of months, my son and I spent Sunday afternoon just having fun and playfully, intuitively pasting a whole range of things in this book. This page is full of goodies that I received from the Southeast Queensland Journal Keepers Meetup. I would love in the coming year, especially as my son is growing an interest in arts and craft, that every now and then when we have a rainy weekend, we can pull out our junk journal and paste in some of the cute little tags or stickers that we've collected over the past few months, and maybe even some of his own paintings and art from daycare. I think that would be such a wonderful activity to do together and hopefully will inspire in him a lifelong interest in journaling and stationery. So it is in this spirit of the joy of family that I wanted to spend some time this morning filling out my 100 spread in my 2026 Hobonichi Techo original, seen here in the Moomin cover. After receiving this book from Hobonichi in October, I did spend one peaceful afternoon pasting in some of these little decorative washi stickers from the washi tape shop, which I still maintain is the most luxurious washi tape I've ever used in my life. And I am absolutely smitten with this brand. In fact, at my last Southeast Queensland Journal Keepers meetup, I found several other fans of the washi tape shop, and we were able to trade a couple of different samples with each other. So I have significantly increased my collection. They very kindly gifted me my first ever order, but I do suspect that I will be placing my own order in the coming months once these pages fill up a little bit more with these decorative stickers. So I have never used the My 100 spreads in any of my previous journals. So you can see here that for my 2025 Daily Toddler Journal, I had optimistically plonked down a cute little sticker that I purchased from Japan, thinking that surely I'll figure out an idea for what to put onto the spread. And I never did. And we're starting to approach December, and I still haven't had any ideas for what to write on this page. I've previously had a Hobonichi cousin also left blank, but I'm hoping that for my 2026 planners, I'll be able to make better use of that spread. So here is my 2026 cousin that I plan to use. And I've already set up the My 100 in the back of this larger A5 planner as a place for me to write the books that I've read in 2026, up to 100 books. The narrow columns of this, though, means that I'm going to have to either squeeze my handwriting down even smaller than what I usually write, or I have to get quite creative with abbreviating the titles in order to fit them in these narrow columns. For my toddler journal, which is what I'm working in today, you'll see that the My 100 is spread out over 2 pages, and it actually offers a more generous column for me to include a little bit more detail. So you see I've already set up some of the decorations that resonates with what I had designated this spread for. And I need to give credit to Michael in the margins, who is one of my favorite YouTubers in the stationery community. And he suggested that I could use the My 100 as a bucket list of experiences that I would like to have. And that seemed absolutely resonant with something for my toddler journal. I have spent the past couple of weeks brainstorming ideas for the bucket list, and now I'm going to fill out this page, maybe leaving a couple of lines blank for new ideas that may come to mind throughout 2026 or in the lead up to it. And then I'll come back and talk a little bit about the ideas that I have written. The pen that I'm going to use is my Asvine C80 in a fine nib, inked up with Robert Oster's Toffee. There's no particular meaning or significance to using this pen and ink pairing, But out of all my currently inked pens, this is one of my ones with the finest tip for these small spaces. But it's also one of my more saturated inks, which I hope would make it easier for me to read through this list in the coming year without struggling with a light colored ink. I think that's a fairly good start for my 100 bucket list. I started the list with some ideas that I already had in mind, and I also let ideas come to me. I know a lot of people create bucket lists, particularly on this spread when it's got four neat columns around the seasons. So things to do in spring, summer, autumn or fall, and winter. I confess here on the Gold Coast, our seasons aren't that distinct. It's not like we have snow in winter or crunchy deciduous leaves in autumn. We really pretty much have hot and humid summers, a thunderstorm slash cyclone season, and then we have winter, which just means things are fairly temperate. So to me, it made so much more sense to categorize them very gently around different themes. So, general activities I have in the first column. So, play hide and seek, play some kind of pretend or imagination, whether we pretend that we are running a fancy restaurant or whether we pretend we're riding in a bus with our dining chairs lined up, build a blanket fort, read his favorite book, down to things like have a teddy bear picnic, go on a walk and pick flowers for daddy, to blow bubbles and play in the rain. Even at the end, I added just then to pet a dog and to pet a cat because we don't have pets. So it would be really interesting to see when in 2026 he encounters people with dogs or cats. Maybe we can meet a friendly dog on a walk. That's certainly not unusual for wonderful dog owners in our neighborhood to stop and let a child pat their dogs, but it would be a bit harder to find someone with a cat. So we'd have to maybe visit someone we know with pet cats who might allow us to give them a little cuddle. The second column, I have a few ideas around food and dining. I've only made my son hot chocolate once in his life, and that was during the cyclone when he was very nervous about all the thunder, the lightning, the torrential downpours. And I made him Italian hot chocolate to soothe his nerves. So I would love to have a special day where we cozy up and I make him proper hot chocolate with vanilla, maybe marshmallows again. There is everything from visiting a farmer's market together and baking a cake through to more general. I said, let's try a new food. So maybe it's a fruit that he's never had before, or just a particular dish he's never had before. And then also to try a new cuisine. So maybe take him out to an Ethiopian restaurant or take him out for Argentinian barbecue. The third column, I have things that kind of surround travel. So maybe we could do something where we visit a lighthouse and or go on a day trip. I also then got the idea to include a range of different kind of natural sites. So I started with saying to visit a beach and to visit a mountain, but then it expanded into to visit a river, to visit a waterfall. And yes, the space here is a little bit tight, but I would love as the year goes on to not just check off the things that we've done from our bucket list, but where it's appropriate, I could even stick on a little post it note, a little fusen, and add a few extra little things. So, what exactly was the new food that he tried, or what was the new cuisine? Another idea is I could use a fountain pen in a different ink so it's a little bit more distinctive. And let's say we go to visit a new restaurant on the 15th of March 2026. And so if I journaled about it on that day, maybe even inserted a photograph or a drawing, then next to visit a new restaurant, I would write 15th of March. So I know that that experience, I could flip through to that particular day and read more about what exactly we did. Finally, the fourth column, I have a range of vehicles. Like most 3 year olds, he is vehicle obsessed. And so there's going to be a range of experiences we could collect: riding a taxi, riding a boat, a cruise ship, aeroplane, train, tram, ferry, which I'm thinking is the size slightly larger than a boat, truck, bike, scooter, carousel, and a tall elevator. I think I mean like an elevator in a very tall building. And as I come up with more ideas, I'll fill them out as we go. So every year we like to take him to the emergency vehicles safari. And so that's an opportunity where he gets to sit inside a fire engine or a police van. So there may be more ideas that I come up with about the sorts of vehicles he might like to ride. I want to thank Michael for this beautiful idea. I think this is such a gentle yet intentional way to think ahead about all the things that I'm looking forward to in the new year, particularly when times are stressful. draining, exhausting. It is so vital for me to look forward to the future and remind myself that there is light at the end of the tunnel of this busy period. And there are so many more happy memories I have yet to make with my loved ones. I would be so excited to report back regularly on how we go with our bucket list throughout the new year. I would love to hear if you use a Hobonichi or you have something similar, whether it's a bullet journal with a similar spread you create, or just some record that you keep of a big list of things that maybe you would like to do. How do you use this spread? And what sort of items might go on your bucket list for the new year? Any ideas and inspiration that you might have would be always so welcome. Going forward, despite the busyness of my semester and a little bit of travel coming up, I hope to block out time in my calendar to prioritize, or should I say, reprioritize, responding to your thoughtful and generous comments. I know so many of you have told me not to put pressure on myself, that even though time after time you come back to write really lovely comments, that you don't expect me to respond to you or respond to you right away. It is something that means a lot to me. Indeed, engaging with you in community means more to me than making and putting out these videos. So I hope to be able to go back to tried and true planning rituals and systems and figuring out ways to get back on top of reading and engaging with the beautiful comments that you take the time to leave. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope you have a lovely week ahead. Next week, I'm thinking about maybe putting some thought into another underutilized spread, the timetable. And I have a neat little idea for what I want to do with this spread. And I hope that next week I'll be able to share more details about what I'm going to do with these pages. Have yourselves a wonderful week. Until then, take good care, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.